Good morning, everybody. Scotland is in a pretty dire state because the political parties in Holyrood, the Scottish Parliament, are pushing ever more woke policies and acts of parliament on the poor, unfortunate people of Scotland. The latest thing is something called the Gender Recognition Reform Bill. That's already had its first reading and it passed in the Scottish Parliament by 88 votes to 33. It's going to have its final reading on the 22nd of December, just 3 days before Christmas this year. What it wants to do is pretty much allow anybody to change their gender whenever they like, or almost whenever they like, without any kind of due process. If I could, for example, just say in Scotland, I'm a lady, and then I would have to be treated as a lady. Don't worry, I'm not, okay? I'm a man, all right? So don't worry about that. Not going to go on that train ever. But if you did, you would have to recognise someone as such in their employment, in their education, in the health service, the police, the courts, prisons, wherever. If they end up in prison, would have to recognise somebody as whatever gender they identify as. Now, the law in the UK is pretty crazy already because we have an act that was brought in Tony Blair's time in 2004 that applies to the whole of the UK that says you can change your gender whenever you want. If you lived as the gender you want to turn into for 2 years and you have a medical diagnosis of gender dysphoria, you cannot change what you were born as. It's just a simple biological fact. But this crazy law says that you can. Scotland wants to take it one stage further and say that you only have to live in your newly acquired gender for 3 months rather than 2 years, and who's going to actually check that? You don't need any medical diagnosis at all of gender dysphoria at all. So you can basically self-declare that you're a different gender to what you are, or your biological sex. You don't need a doctor to state that you are. And it can be done by anyone over the age of 16. Rather than 18, which is what it is in the rest of the UK at the moment. So what this will mean is anyone over the age of 16 can just declare that they're whatever gender they like. And if you don't accept it, there will be criminal penalties for you. It also means that women in women's spaces, in women's changing rooms, in women's sports facilities, in women's toilets, in women's hospital wards, women's prisons, if you're unfortunate enough to get there or bad enough to get there, whatever, the state still has a duty of care to you. But women in any of those situations may be in danger from men who are just taking advantage of the law. It's a pretty sorry state that Scotland is in when even the United Nations has to chastise your government. They have someone, I didn't know this, is called a special rapporteur. And they released a statement. This special rapporteur is called Reem Al Salem. She's a feminist from Jordan, I understand. But when someone like that is actually criticising you, someone who's already pretty woke, is criticising you for even more extreme wokery, you know you've gone right off the deep end. This is what Raheem Al-Salem said to the SNP, the Nicola Sturgeon's party of government in Scotland, about what she said. This bill would potentially open the door for violent males who identify as men, to abuse, I think that should say women actually, for violent males who identify as women to abuse the process of acquiring a gender certificate and the rights that are associated with it. This presents potential risks to the safety of women in all our diversity. Well, that's a pretty woke statement anyway, but it is criticising the extreme wokery of this gender recognition reform bill. What it's going to do is just basically create chaos in the order of biological sex that nature, God, gives us to be born as males or females. They just basically want to say, well, there is essentially no such thing as fixed concepts of male and female. Anyone can say whatever they are. They're male or female or whatever other gender they make up, because apparently there's 100 or more genders. You can be, and you have to be recognized as whatever you say you are, rather than what you are physically, biologically, anatomically, chromosomally, according to nature, from whenever this bill becomes an act of law in Scotland, if it does. So it's been supported by the SNP, the Labour Party, the Green Party, the usual suspects. They were going to try and do this in England a few years ago under Theresa May's government. But actually, when she went out, Boris Johnson came in, Liz Truss came in after her, now we've got Rishi Sunak, who knows what we're going to have next year. But one good thing is that they actually ditched this gender recognition reform for England, so it isn't going to happen right at the moment. But in Wales, you've got the Labour Party; they're very keen on doing something there, and Northern Ireland doesn't really have a functioning political body. Stormont hasn't actually operated in Northern Ireland for, I think, about 3 years. But you have a lot of parties there that would support this kind of wokery coming through. It's utterly insane. And it needs to be stopped. There are a few rebel SNP MPs, including one who actually resigned from the government in October to vote against this bill. But as I said earlier, it still passed 88 to 33 in the first reading. So we just need a whole new party. And here we are, the Heritage Party. And we will have candidates in Scotland, as well as England and Wales and Northern Ireland. And there may well be a by-election coming up next year in Dumfries and Galloway. And our leader in Scotland, David Griffiths, will stand in that by-election if it happens. And we are aiming to get into power in Scotland, however long that takes, in order to change it back to a conservative, small c conservative, traditional society with Christian values. And it really pains me to see what has happened in Scotland since devolution, and with the devolution, the SNP have become the party of power in Scotland from the very beginning. And they're not just about Scottish independence, they are about imposing all of this extreme wokery and climate alarmism on a country that was at the forefront of all good things that were Christian in the past. It's the country of John Knox, and look at it now. You need to get rid of the people in Holyrood. Perhaps we even need to get rid of Holyrood itself, and just have local counties running the local affairs as we used to have in the past, so we don't have an extra body imposing all of this nonsense on Scotland. Where I went to university in St Andrews, which is why I actually feel very, very bad for what's happening in Scotland. I love the country of Scotland, and I wish it could get back on track. So we're going to try and help that to happen. So please come and join us in the Heritage Party for political resistance to extreme wokery and to restore common sense principles and policies to Scotland, as well as the whole of the United Kingdom as well. Thanks for listening, everybody. God bless you all.